Former Congressman Tancredo and excellent investigative reporter Julie Hayden together, back it out to like 12,000 feet and tell the story and how all of this fits together, and who the murder of Tom Clements, and of course Evan Bell's killed, and no one to this day apparently knows where he was going. He had pipe bombs in the car, and he had those handwritten directions to get to Clements' home,
and surveillance equipment,
and digital voice recorders, and all kinds of crazy stuff. We know the relationship between his father and the governor, and it was just too weird, and he got too angry too quick. And so, who wants to do a narrative on this entire story? Tom, if you would, we'll let you try it if you want to take a shot at it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, can I have a question for Julie just before we do that?
Sure.
Julie, it is. I heard once, and I don't know about this, and so I'm not. You would probably know for sure, but is it true that when the FBI when they were watching him out Turkey originally, 2006, watching his house, that he did not come out for a long time, and they used a ruse to go up to his door and get him to come to the door? And that
is absolutely true, and the nature of that ruse is kind of interesting.
Oh my God, is it ever it's Domino's pizza?
Exactly. Well, which keep in mind is the guy, which is what Evan Ebel killed, a pizza delivery guy here in Denver, and used that uniform and the pizza box. That was the ruse he used to get Tom Clements to open the door.
Now tell me there's no connection there that they
you're exactly right. I mean, he wouldn't come out, and I think the way it was explained to me, it was kind of like an Al Capone thing. They figured, okay, we can't necessarily get him on the terrorism angle yet, but we know that there are visa and immigration violations with this housekeeper. And they could never get anybody to come out of the house, and they watched it, and finally they thought, well, let's just go ring the doorbell, pose as a pizza guy, and see if we see the housekeeper in there. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. Then they had probable cause to search the home, and that's when they make the discovery that he was, which was what he was convicted of, holding this servant as a sex slave.
Wow. And then Ebel kills the Domino pizza delivery guy, uses the exact same ruse to get Clements to open the door. Now, come on. I mean, that just cannot be. Is that just that's a modus operandi for everybody who wants to knock somebody off? I mean...
Well, yeah, and I mean, and to me, what's really extraordinary about this is sort of the public fight now between Hal Haddon and the governor's office. I mean, the Post did a great job on that. I mean, Hal Haddon is accusing the governor's main legal guy of calling him up an hour after Clements' murder, making a pretext call, essentially, trying to trick him into saying something. I mean, and the governor's office says, well, he was just calling as a courtesy because Clements was being sued by Hal Haddon. It's like they didn't call every other lawyer who's suing,
No.
I mean, to me, and the fact that that's become so public all of a sudden, that's extraordinary to me.
It really is. There's so many.
And I do know this. I think that there continue to be people who are receiving protection. Again, as bizarre as this whole thing seems, people at very high levels in the investigation and in the FBI think that it is certainly possible that there is this Saudi connection and that more people are going to be targeted because El Turki is still sitting in jail in Colorado.
And, of course, the fact that, I mean, what really, I guess, prompted another look at this thing was the fact that the first person they arrested took into custody. I don't know what the actual formal term would be when they brought this person of interest into custody in Boston, who was, of course, a Saudi, and immediately said they had enough on him to go into his house, search all of his belongings, take all of his stuff. Then the next day said there's nothing there, but we're going to deport this guy on national security grounds.
The Boston guy is
the Boston guy. I mean, just saying, it just, there's so many parts of this thing that make you keep. And here's the other thing, Pete. I just wish, and Julie, how do you feel about this? I really hope, and I feel bad that when I read something like this and I read that the FBI is looking into it, I want to be able to say to myself, oh, good. They'll get to the bottom of it.
Especially in Boston.
Know. But you know what? I don't feel like that anymore.
No one does.
I just don't have the trust in our government at any level. It's too bad, and I wish I didn't feel that way, but I don't look at this and go, good, well, this will end it.
Well, what my feeling on it is I suspect the FBI will get to the bottom of it, but whether they're going to be allowed to do anything about that is the big question.
That's really what I mean, yes.
But the Saudi guy in Boston, he was supposed to be in Findlay, Ohio. His hands are burned. He was tackled running away. And Mrs. Obama visited him in the hospital, and that was in the Saud papers, not in the U.S. press.
Right.
And then the Saudi foreign minister goes and meets the president off a schedule that night, and now he's going to be deported. Now, I don't know where his whereabouts are. I spoke with Robert Spencer. No one seems to know his exact whereabouts.
He was going to be deported the next day.
Yes, that's right.
That's in and of itself incredible. Nobody gets deported in a day.
But it
takes months.
If you remember when after 9/11, when the Bushies sent the airplane around to pick up all the family members of Bin Laden, and off they all went back home. But all this kind of stuff. But here's this guy, El Turkey, and
I just brought up the Boston thing because
it's true
that the Saudis actually posed to us. They said, if you don't let this guy go, and this is according to the embassy document, if you don't let this guy go, there will be terrorist activities in the United States.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's the only connection there that, I don't know. It's just,
where is John Hickenlooper on this story right now? Julie, what's your best sense of what he is saying or doing about this?
Well, nothing. Zero. Zippo. I mean, it's pretty clear from the Post story that his people are working behind the scenes, but the governor has, basically made it perfectly clear he's done talking about it, and he uses the investigation. He says, I can't interfere with the investigation. But clearly his hands were all over this. Now, I don't think he had any idea what any kind of outcome was going to be, but he was clearly involved in the whole situation, both in allowing this guy to go free and then in the last-second decision to not let him go
But aren't
free.
we still asking the questions about the early release of a guy who has such a horrible record? He'd been in the hole most of his time, and Hickenlooper makes that speech about this. And, I mean, I still say, for him to come through all of those different stopgap points of the people who parole, and all they had to do is read his record, read his jacket. He had no business.
But he got out 4 years early because of a mistake. You got to wonder, really? No one caught that?
And he doesn't go to a halfway house, and the guys at Step 13 have talked about that at great length. He goes to a house that his father rents for him, and the Cadillac, I guess his father bought him. The Cadillac that was a 91 Cadillac DeVille that he was Wise County, Texas. That was his car. And apparently the belief is, and I don't know this, but I'm saying I believe that his father bought him the car. He was working in his father's law office. He didn't show up for 3 days, and nobody turns him in.
Right. And then as you said, you don't get out of, well, obviously you can, but it's unusual to get out of prison and go straight to your own house.
Well, yeah, you don't.
Without anybody.
Especially being that violent and that crazy, Julie.
Right. And there's all kinds of, we also know that that somehow or another Evan Ebel had access to money, and I don't believe it was from his father, working on behalf of other 211 crew members. So he was a very busy guy, for the first few days after he was released from prison, and apparently nobody is even remotely keeping track on all of this.
Man. And why would he have a grudge, have it in for Tom Clements? He should love him. He got out 4 years. What's the connection? Why in the world would this guy get out of prison, go through the process you were just describing, and collect the money, surveil the premises, watch him as long as he can, concoct this ruse to get him to open the door? Why? What is the reason?
And I think the assumption is from the very beginning, the way it was explained to me is this 211 prison gang, they just do stuff for money. And,
killers.
They don't do stuff for philosophy, philosophical reasons. They do it for money. And from the beginning, everybody involved in this case said somebody paid the 211 crew to have Evan Ebel, who would be one of their trusted soldiers, so to speak, upon his release to go do all this stuff. And the big question has always been why. And I don't think they've come up with anybody else. Initially they were looking at maybe it was tied to some sort of white supremacists because of all the stuff down in Texas, but that's been cleared up. No connection to the murders of the people in Texas. So, I do think the Post made it pretty clear that they haven't been able to come up with anyone else who's funding the 211 prison crew or, giving them an agenda.
Where was he going? Where was he going that day when he was...
Yeah. That, I think, was one of the big questions.